Today, we are diving deep into the mind of one of modern literature's most mysterious and brilliant figures, Elena Ferrante. And through her essays, we're going to explore her decades-long struggle to find her real voice, a journey that, and this is wild, literally forced her to unlearn everything she was ever taught about good writing. So let's just kick things off with a pretty provocative question, one that's right at the heart of Ferrante's work. What if all the rules, the structure, the very act of trying to write well is the exact thing that traps our truest stories in a cage? For Ferrante, this wasn't some abstract philosophical idea. No, this was a real, painful, personal war. And that war? Well, it started super early for her. With the most basic writing tool you can possibly imagine, the page itself. This is where the fight between her own inner chaos and the world's demand for order really began. Ferrante starts her essays with this really beautiful memory she has of a little girl named Cecilia. When she's asked to write her name, Cecilia doesn't worry about lines or staying in the margins. She just fills the blank page with these joyful, uneven, and totally free letters. For Ferrante, this became this powerful symbol of a lost paradise, a time before all the rules kick in. Because, right after that initial freedom comes the school notebook. The horizontal black lines, those taught her control. But it was the vertical red margins, she said they felt like a threat. Can you imagine? They were these rigid boundaries, this constant silent reminder that her words and even her thoughts had to stay within this prescribed space. To cross them meant you were doing it wrong. So what starts as this external battle with the page, it quickly turns into an internal one. It's like it created this split right down the middle of her mind, a battle between two totally different ways of writing. We could call them her two pens. All right, so on one hand, you've got the compliant pen. This is her good student writing, It's orderly, disciplined, technically perfect. It gets her A's from the teachers, but inside she feels like it's a total fraud. It's hollow. It's just following the rules of this established, mostly male literary tradition. But then you have the impetuous pen. And this thing is the complete opposite. It's chaotic, impulsive, a total mess. It just bursts out of her. It feels so true, so real, but she can't control it at all. It's wild and untamable, and poof, it's gone. This, she felt, this was her woman's voice, and she had no idea what to do with it. And here's the thing, she thought she was totally alone in this struggle. But then she's reading this 16th century poet, Gaspara Stampa, and realizes, oh my God, she was asking the exact same questions centuries ago. Stampa felt this fiery truth inside her, but the tools she had to write with, the poetic forms of her time, they just didn't fit. It's like trying to squeeze an ocean into a teacup. So the big question became, how do you fit a woman's sprawling, chaotic truth into the neat, tidy boxes of a male tradition? So this chaotic, impulsive voice needed a name, and eventually Ferrante found one. It was actually a word she got from her mother, and this one word, you guys, it would become the key to unlocking everything. The word is frontimalia. Let me say that again, frontimalia. It's a Neapolitan dialect term her mom used to describe this feeling of being shattered, like a painful jumble of fragments. And we're not just talking about messy thoughts here. This is a deep, gut-level turmoil, where memories and feelings and all these contradictions are just crashing into each other. And then it hits her. This chaos. This is the source of my real voice. And this is such a perfect way to visualize it. This is what Ferrante would call her impetuous handwriting. I mean, look at it. It's not neat, right? It doesn't care about the lines. It just spills out all energy and impulse. It's literally frontimalia made visible on the page. And it's the total opposite of that controlled, good penmanship she was always getting praised for. And it wasn't just her mom's word. She started seeing this idea everywhere. She reads Virginia Woolf, who says, a writer isn't one single stable person, but a multitude. I am 20 people. And that just clicks for her. It told her, hey, this feeling of being in pieces, it's not a bug. It's a feature. It's not something to fix. It's something to explore. Which, of course, leads to the million-dollar question. If this chaos is the truth, how in the world do you wrangle it into a story? Right, because that was the huge problem. Frontimalia might be the source of truth, but by itself, it's not a story. It's just noise. The massive breakthrough for her came when she realized the story isn't just something inside her. It has to be formed between her and someone else. Think about her early novels. The narrators, Delia, Olga, Lita, they're all brilliant, right? But they are so isolated. They're basically trapped inside their own heads, just drowning in their personal frontomalia. Their point of view is so all-consuming that the story becomes a kind of cage. They can't ever really understand themselves because there's nobody else there to reflect them back. The answer, the real key, came from a philosopher named Adriana Cavarero, and this idea of the necessary other is just perfect. The whole concept is that, look, you can't truly know your own story, not until you see it reflected in someone else's eyes. It's like I tell you my story so that you can then tell it back to me, and in doing so, you give it a shape I could never see by myself. And it turns out there's a powerful literary example of this. You've probably heard of Gertrude Stein's book, The Autobiography of Alice B. Toklas. Well, here's the mind-blowing twist. Stein wrote the whole thing herself, but she wrote it in the voice of her partner, Toklas. How cool is that? It was an absolutely genius move. In order to tell her own story, to finally see herself, she had to literally get out of her own head and tell it through the voice of her necessary other. Okay, so we have all these different threads, right? The caged voice, the chaos of frontomagia, this idea of a necessary other. So how did all of this finally click into place? Well, it all came together in the one work that would make her a household name around the world. So check this out. Here's how she got there. First, the problem. Her narrators were lonely, trapped in their own heads. Second, the theory. She discovers this powerful idea that we need someone else to help us tell our story. That leads to number 3, the application. She decides to stop writing about a single I and start writing about a we, the intense 60-year friendship between two women, Lena and Leela. And finally, number 4, the breakthrough. That becomes the Neapolitan novels. The relationship itself, that became the container. Just think about that. It was finally a structure strong enough to hold all the chaos, all the contradictions, all the frontomaglia of not just one, but 2 whole lives. Lena's ambition? It's totally shaped by Leela's brilliance. Leela's anger? It's reflected right back in Lena's fear. Every single choice one of them makes sends these ripples through the other's life. So their story isn't just one person's lonely inner monologue anymore. No, it's this sprawling 60-year-long dialogue. They are the ultimate necessary other for each other, constantly telling and retelling their shared story just so they can finally understand it themselves. And all of this really leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. Ferrante's whole journey seems to suggest that maybe we've got it all wrong. Maybe self-knowledge isn't some lonely, isolated quest. Maybe, just maybe, the truest version of our story isn't something we find by digging deep inside ourselves, but something that only snaps into focus when we see it reflected in the eyes of someone else.